Good afternoon and good evening to everybody to our third webinar in our series of webinars that focus on the energy transition, mainly renewable energy, carbon capture, and hydrogen or energy storage in general. Today's webinar will focus on the Shagaya Renewable Energy Park timeline. Since we already completed phase one and we are about to start the real phases that will allow the private sector to participate in securing the future power generation of Kuwait through renewable resources. I will start just giving a small background about the project, a bit of history. Then we will start inviting our panelists to join us and talk a little bit about real life experience they gain from this project, phase one. They will tell us about lesson learned and also their vision for the future steps. Unfortunately, we couldn't convince the Kuwait Authority for Public-Private Partnership to join us, although they are willing to join us. But since the project is passing through a critical stage, they are very close to sign with the financial and technical advisor to launch phase two. They prefer not to appear in such webinar at this moment, but they promise they will join us in future webinars talking about this project. The project started in 2010 with a set of objectives. The first objective is to secure 15% of our national peak demand in Kuwait from renewable resources by 2030. The second objective is to create an economy that can generate a GDP away from hydrocarbon-related industries. Also, it is targeting to reduce our domestic fuel consumption wind to power generation or power plant every year. Also, to create investment opportunity, unconventional investment opportunity through long-term power purchase agreement with Kuwait government, to reduce domestic greenhouse gas emissions, since Kuwait is the second in the world in terms of emission per capita, create new job opportunities for national young generations, and increase local content of renewable energy supply chain, among many other objectives, but these are the key objectives. The timeline of the project, as you can see here, in 2009-2010, the government of Kuwait approved Shagaya initiative as a national development plan, and they approved the national target of 15% renewable energy by 2030. Between 2011 and 2014, a master plan, site selection, engineering, tender documents being conducted till we reach about mid of 2014, where contracts start get signature and groundbreaking work started between mid of 2014 and the last part of the plant commissioned in mid 2018. From 2017, we started, at that time I was working with the Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research. We start planning for phase two and phase three. We released the news through the regular channels, and also we reviewed the master plan that we developed in 2013. We do hope between now, which is 2022 and 2030, we can achieve this strategic target, although it needs to be reviewed. It seems that with the advancement in technology, 15% became a very humble target, and it can be reviewed and increased a little bit. And also, we do hope that expansion of clean technology role in the National Energy Security Plan can be commissioned. The master plan started in 2013, based in collaboration with Fraunhofer. Luckily, we have a representative Fraunhofer Institute with us today. We built our master plan based on 3 key scenarios. The first scenario is to maximize the peak load demand or power shaving during peak from the park, which is at that time 88 square kilometer in size. The second scenario, we developed the master plan so that we can have the highest total annual energy from the park. And the third scenario, we focused on the lowest levelized cost of electricity. And based on these 3 scenarios, a different optimization process and different technology mix being tested until we reach the final master plan at that time, which also reviewed in 2017, 2018. In terms of phase one is completed totally, and it is in full operation since 2018. It consists of 6 projects. The first 3 projects are related to power plants, and the last 3 projects related to supporting projects like overhead line, substation, and infrastructure such as roads, administration buildings, and others. The total investment spent for phase 1 is about $460 million, and the total capacity of phase 1, which is in operation right now, 70 megawatt. That was a demonstration. A lot of lesson been learned from this pilot project, which we will hear some of them from our guest speakers. The first plant commissioned in 2017 was the 10 megawatt PV plant. It was split in 2 halves. The first half used monocrystalline PV technology with 5 megawatt installed capacity, with about 73.3% performance ratio. And the second half, we used the thin film technology with 77.6 performance ratio. The second plant commissioned in 2017 was the wind farm. Also, it was 5 megawatt, consists of 5 towers. Each tower consists of 2 megawatt generator. The annual generation was 35,000 megawatt hour per year. By the way, both targets of PV and wind already been exceeded over the last few years. The last plant commissioned in 2018 was the solar thermal power plant, or CSP. It was 50 megawatt solar thermal with 8 to 10 hours thermal energy storage, 0 fuel burning. It is pure renewable energy plant. The annual generation set to about 130,000 megawatt hour per year, which been approved and entered to the commercial operation date since 2018. The reviewed master plan conducted in 2018 was done mainly because of the improvement in technology, mainly PV, and also reduction in cost between 2013 and 2017. And as a result, the total installed capacity can be hosted by the park reached about 4,250 megawatt with a mix of technologies. 85% of that technology went to solar PV, which is obvious due to the low operation and maintenance cost, and also fast installation, and low levelized cost of energy comparing with other technologies. 550 megawatt was allocated for solar thermal, especially with the energy storage to stabilize the grid for power evacuation. And the last part is for wind technology, which is 100 megawatt installed capacity on the northeastern corridor of the park. The land use for this reviewed master plan was 80 square kilometer. The annual expected energy generation was about 9,650 gigawatt hour. The estimated levelized costs of electricity, the overall, was about $4.2 per kilowatt hour, and about 20 million ton of CO2 emission prevention per year was estimated. This is in brief, just to put you on the picture, what we are talking about. We are talking about mega project. We are talking about a project that will put Kuwait on the map of renewable energy development and climate change mitigation. Today, I would like to welcome on your behalf our guest speakers who came from different institutions and companies that participated in phase one, so that they can share with us their experience and also their vision for the future expansion of the project. We start with Dr. Christoph Kost. He's head of group energy system and energy economies at Fraunhofer Solar Institute. Also, we'd like to welcome Robin Roman, manager of the Advision Power and New Energy Business from Worley Parson, who are the project manager and also owner's engineer throughout phase one. Also, I'd like to welcome Alan Cortes, the managing director sales from TSK Group, who also won the project, the construction, the EPC project for the PV part and the solar thermal part. And they are with us today for to share with us their expertise and lesson learned from these two projects. Also, we have Jorge, also from, he's the operation and maintenance manager on the site. Unfortunately, I couldn't get his photo, but he's listening to us with us. Also, we'd like to welcome Rafael Castillo. He's part of TSK, but he's heading a COSAR Capital, a subsidiary of TSK in charge of project development. So we'd like him to talk a little bit about project development, what is the key success factor that they as project developer would like to see it in phase 2 and 3 of the Shagaya project. Last but not least, I would like to welcome Raul Sazma. He is the operation and maintenance project manager of the wind division at Elecnor, the contractor of the wind energy part, in collaboration with Al Ghanim, the local partner of or joint venture with Elecnor, who built and operating the wind part of this project. With this, I would like to invite Dr. Christoph to talk about their role as research institute, a world-leading research institute in terms of solar thermal and solar PV, and how they participated with us in 2013 and also 2018 when we developed and reviewed the master plan. And also we'd like to listen to your views with respect to the emerging technology and the next step for this project to be successful. Christoph, you are muted.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Salam, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me today again to Kuwait. It's a pleasure to work with you again and to present some results that we have done in the past. I'm expert in system analysis and integration of renewables, and together with my colleague Tom Fleury, who's responsible for CSP, we worked in the past for developing this general strategy of the master plan. And in this respect, we are supported by defining targets for the Shagaya Park. And I want to present you some results from 2018 again, and to give you an overview of what we have done in the past, and maybe would be also an option to update this in the future, because of course in the meantime some aspects, economic or technical parts, have been changed, so it would be interesting to update maybe some of the results here. But let's go to have an overview on this. So what we have done is we have in 2017-2018, we have done a development plan for Shagaya and the whole Kuwaiti energy system. So we connected the system analysis of Shagaya with the total energy system of Kuwait. And we try to evaluate renewables and the conventional technologies together in an analysis, and try to provide an implementation plan for Shagaya. But very important that in 2017-2018, we looked at the total Kuwaiti system. So what have we done in our analysis? We have looked at the different technology options in the field in the Shagaya Park, but also in the rest of the system. We included electricity demand profiles, weather information, and we provided different scenarios with different focus. So a renewable scenario, a load shift scenario, a demand change, and also some sensitivities in the fuel price expectations. Then we did an optimization, also including, of course, constraints and conditions, and try to figure out what would be least cost options for the development of the Shagaya Park in combination with the total system. And for this, for example, here is a picture of the Kuwaiti power system. We simplified the electricity demand into different nodes. And you see, for example, here, Shagaya is located here, and here you have Kuwait City and so on. And we connected to each of the nodes the installed conventional power plants. Here you see the capacities which are connected to these nodes. And of course, we connected also the electricity demand, which is somehow also differently distributed over Kuwait compared to the installed capacity here on the left-hand side. And you see here Shagaya as one single node at the moment. Yeah, it's installed capacity, it's 0 because it was before the 70 megawatt installed. Then we put this in our model, which we have developed here at Fraunhofer. I do not want to go into detail. It provides us an optimal expansion of the Shagaya Park and the total Kuwaiti system, and give us the results on the structure of the power system. What we have done on the scenario side, so most of the scenarios are scenarios where there's a minimum target for renewables in the Shagaya Park, about 4 gigawatt, and there is also a restriction of land use in terms of square kilometers, which has to be also covered as a maximum. And then we have some change in demand, for example, on fuel prices. But very interesting also are scenario 7 and 8, where we also included a capacity credit constraint for the Shagaya Park to reduce a peak load from the park, and also a Shagaya reserve, as we have called it, where we said that the park has to provide somehow constant electricity output over every hour of each day. And with this assumption, we want to see how, also a system benefit from the park could be to the total system. Then we calculated this with our model, and here are the results in terms of capacity for the park, the Shagaya Park, in terms of PV. PV also here fixed system as rooftop system outside of Shagaya. Here you see wind, and here you see CSP, especially in the two last scenario where we have this peak shaving and also this constant output. And in total, you can say that in most of the scenario, PV is the main solution due to cost and land use advantages. But for CSP, we have a higher value regarding the stability if we require this from the park to the total system. Wind is less used in this analysis due to higher land use and less electricity provided per square meter covered by the technology. But if enough land would be available, also wind power would be extended. And also, if we see this also from other countries, if we come to a certain amount of PV, then wind power would also come in. So also in a long-term strategy, having a lot of PV in the system, wind would be also come into the system. And I would say that how Salem showed the results now for the master plan 2030 with this 4 gigawatt of PV and 500 CSP and 100 wind. This is in line what we have calculated here, because it's somehow a mixture of the results, or it's maybe also similar to the scenario 7 results with a combination of CSP, wind, and CSP. But of course, this can be maybe changed slightly if we adapt this now for the current technical and economic developments in terms of cost of the technology and so on. Here we see again the scenario 7 that we have calculated. That would be the optimal solution from our model. I think it's very similar to the results which are now in the projection until 2030. Here you can see also that the expansion in the conventional technology, ST, would be a steam turbine, and you see higher increase of combined cycle power plants here, as this technology has a higher efficiency compared to steam turbines. And here you see then the addings of capacities in PV and CSP if Shagaya would be extended in the next years. And here on the right-hand side, you see also some figures that we have calculated based on our model. And based on this layout has been then developed. I think it's now have been also updated, and Salem also showed it in his presentation. I want to highlight some key results from the analysis why this combination of PV and CSP was so valuable. We have here a winter week where we see that there is a PV peak in here, and here you have some CSP. And if you just look on these profiles, you see that CSP can provide through the storage a power generation in the evening or in the night after sunset, after the energy provision from PV. And if you look at the summer, it changed slightly as the generated electricity and also heat from PV and CSP is larger. And here you also see how the PV and the CSP electricity provision for this exemplary week could look like from Shaqaya if it would be extended to higher capacities. So if I want to summarize and give an outlook from our analysis in 2018, the analysis has shown that renewables are very beneficial in terms also of the total cost. So we saw that in the results of our total system analysis of the Kuwaiti system, that the whole cost have been decreased due to this fuel savings through the renewable park. Our findings was that the integration of PV systems should be carried out as soon as possible. The CSP technology is beneficial for stability criteria and peak shaving, and combined cycle is favorable compared to steam turbines due to higher efficiency. At that point in time, we provided some outlook and next steps. We thought it would be very beneficial to do a further in-depth analysis of the complete power system of Kuwait, including the following questions. How about more renewables also on other sites, maybe how this would be beneficial to the system? And what is the impact to the Kuwaiti power grid from increasing share of renewables? Here also a more detailed study than ours should be done. And then the question is, of course, how should an adjusted implementation plan by 2030 for new power plants and also transmission lines look like? So that would be so my short input from the analysis that we have done. I think after now 4 to 5 years after, it would be really beneficial to follow the master plan, how it was developed. Maybe it should be updated or adjusted at some points, and it's very good to have a closer look at those points which are still open questions, and then really to solve these questions in the near future, that the Shagaya Park can be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph, for this very fundamental part of the project, the master plan. And we'd like to move on with by inviting Robin Roman from the project management and owner's engineer point of view to listen to the challenges, especially managing about 6 projects running at the same time in the middle of the desert, what kind of challenges they face and how they overcome such difficulties.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dr. of the Shagaya project. Okay, so I will have prepared some slides. Some of them, part of the content has already
Robin.
Okay.
Robin, connection is not very good, so your sound goes and back. So
okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, now it's better.
Okay. So if you see that the connection is not good, let me know and I will disconnect my camera.
Okay.
Okay. So as I said, I prepared some slides to guide the conversation. Okay. Okay. Basically, on the objectives, Dr. Salem has already talked to them. The objectives of phase I of Shagaya was basically to meet the objective defined by the state of Kuwait to achieve 15% of Kuwait's total generation by 2030. Phase I was aimed to evaluate the requirements of these specific technologies, solar thermal, photovoltaic and wind energy, and test them in this harsh Kuwaiti desert environment, which in some aspects like the sandstorms are very particular and more difficult than other countries in the neighborhood. So the main aspect or the main objective, let's say, of phase I was to prove the concept and make sure that these technologies are tested in the field and try to extract, let's say, lessons learned and let's try to find, let's say, those aspects which are not working that well, and that would prevent or that would need to be coped with in a large-scale implementation of these technologies in Kuwait. Okay, And last but not least, also it was very important to develop in-country experience in Kuwait among engineers and contractors, developers, actually all the stakeholders. Okay. So as I will go quickly through this. So the first phase of Shagaya included these 5, let's say, sub-projects: 50 megawatt CSP plant, a 10 megawatt PV plant using thin film and polycrystalline technology, a 10 megawatt wind farm, and then 132 11 kilovolt substation.
Robin, I think we stuck with the first slide.
Okay.
If you are moving the slides, it's not moving.
Okay. Let me know. I will share again. That's weird.
Yes.
Because I was moving. There we go. Let me know if you can see it again. You should be seeing the project overview slide. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay, give me a second. I will disconnect my camera just to make sure making weird things and share again. Let me know when you can see the screen.
If you need, I can share it from my side. Yeah, that's it's working now. Yes.
You can you see it?
Working now.
The project overview. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Salim. Okay. I've disconnected my camera just to make sure there is enough width for the communication. Okay, this is just a brief overview. These are the 5 sub-projects, which include not only the wind farm, the PV plant, and the CSP plant, but also the substation and the overhead line. Okay. This has been also a bit of information on the different phases and the contractors. The wind farm was executed by Elecnor and Alganim. The PV plant and the CSP plant by TSK, Electrónica and Electricidad, and the substation was implemented. It was executed by Lassen and Tubro, while the overhead line was implemented by Inavensa. Okay, so as Dr. Salem mentioned before, the project is all the projects are in commercial operation since 2018, and the first one entered into commercial operation in 2017, shortly after the commissioning of the substation. Okay. I will move to the next slide. Let me know if you can see it. So here is a bit of a presentation on the different technologies. I will not dedicate time to it, but basically it explains gives a bit of flavors and details on the different technologies and different plants, the installed capacities, the type of equipment installed, and so on. On the execution, phase 1 was implemented considering the following, let's say, execution or contracting strategy. The substation and the overhead power transmission line were executed under EPC contracts, which, as I mentioned before, ended. So the delivery ended in 2017. And the PV, the wind, and the CSP projects were executed under DBO contracts. So this design, build, and operation or operate contracts included the EPC, so the construction of these plants, plus 6 years of operation and maintenance. So this was a way for Kaiser to manage the project and make sure that there was a smooth transition between the execution and the operation and maintenance stage. Okay. And we, Worley Parsons, we were appointed in 2014 as the owner's engineer and PMC consultant, and we have been working on the project since then, with supervising the works on site through our entity in Kuwait and conducting this owner's engineer work from our New Energy Center of Excellence in Madrid. Okay. On the challenges and lessons learned. So I've prepared this slide basically to summarize the main challenges. Okay, so when I will elaborate them a bit and talk to them. Being the first one, the harsh meteorological conditions. Okay, so local climate conditions, including.
Rowan, may I just ask the audience if you are fine with the screen and the sound, please just put thumb up in the chat to make sure that you are following us. Otherwise, we don't have feedback from your side.
Okay.
Thank you. Just you continue.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Salem. Okay, so on the challenges that the project had to deal with during the implementation, the first one is the local climate conditions. As I mentioned, very high temperatures, a very dusty environment, a significant number of sandstorms, an average of 26 per year, if I recall correctly, make it represent a significant challenge on one side on the design of the plant. So this it required, for instance, of utilizing or using a very specific type of wind turbine that was designed for had this kind of high dust, high temperature kit in it to make sure that the nacelle's cooling system was able of operating at high temperatures and without impacting significantly the power generation of the wind turbines. This is just an example. On the solar part, of course, there was a loss of captured solar radiation, which impacted, let's say, the project by requiring additional cleaning sometimes, or additional operation and maintenance costs that have been, let's say, tested and verified during the operation and maintenance of the plant. Okay. The second one that we would like to talk about is the lack of familiarity of the main contractors with local regulations and subcontractors. So the Shagaya Phase I project was the first of its kind in Kuwait. So some of the contractors that have been working on the project are international companies with wide experience in the execution of these kind of projects, but with very limited experience or non-experience in Kuwait. So this represented a significant challenge because basically, I mean, there were some, let's say, on one side there were some misalignments between the international standards used for the execution and the local standards that had to. This was an aspect that had to be coped with, and significant efforts had to be made to make sure that all the approvals were obtained by local authorities, and deviations from the local standards were, let's say, approved by local authorities as required by the project. And on the other side, this was the first renewable energy project, large renewable energy project connected to the grid, at least for CSP and wind. The lack of a connection agreement was also something that represented one additional, let's say, challenge that had to be coped with, and that required of significant efforts by KISER, as you, Dr. Salem and Dr. Ayman and Dr. Mutasim know very well, to talk and work with the Ministry of Energy and Water and the DBO contractors as well, to make sure that all the approvals could be obtained. These are the kind of things that have evidenced the importance of having a very strong and capable local partner. Okay, so to make sure that this particular challenge could be properly coped with during the implementation. Okay. On the remoteness of the site, I mean, this was also very important due to a number of things. On one side, I mean, having a site which is far away from, or at a significant distance from the cities, on one side, made it more complex to secure some supplies, as it could be water and concrete, and this required of additional effort by the contractors to make sure that this could be they would be available, and it also represented additional costs that may not be accounted for during the proposal preparation phase. On the other side, it represented the remoteness of the site represented a risk in itself, an HSE risk, because I mean, typically a lot of vehicles had to travel to the site from Kuwait on a daily basis. At a certain point, the number of the labor working on site was significant, and this represented a risk for motor vehicle accidents. So in this case, a number of actions and a contingency or mitigation plan was put in place. And this plan included having a base camp, conducting some speed controls on-site and off-site, to conduct or put in place a vehicle inspection program, provide training on safe driving to contractors, maybe subcontractors, to put in place a disciplinary program to make sure that anyone, let's say, not complying with the regulations could be dismissed if required. And of course, and this was a very important step and a good decision by KISA, was to make sure that the temporary road was, let's say, in place and maintained properly. TSK was doing that for a while, and also until the final access road was available. Okay, so the remoteness of the site was itself a significant risk. Okay. On the other side, I've included here unexploded ordnances. So although the army scanned and surveyed the site, I mean, just given the large size of the mainly the solar plants or the CSP plant, so a number of unexploded ordnance were found, and this obliged the DBO contractors to stop the work, causing certain delays. Okay, so this was let's say managed by having the army before the execution of some of the projects, having the army scanning and surveying the site completely, and also establishing some specific safety protocols during construction to make sure that at least for some of the activities like earthworks or piling, the DBO contractors had a clear guideline and plan on what to do in case of finding one, and so that the impact would only be in terms of delays, but not in terms of losses or fatalities. Okay. And the last two, let's say, lessons learned that I've included here is, on one side, poor HSE culture by certain subcontractors. So and also the EPC and DBO contractors made huge efforts to, on one side, define HSE requirements that were as per adequate standards that would be complied with by these subcontractors, but a lot of effort had to be made to make sure that let's say a close supervision was in place, providing training on health and safety to contractors and subcontractors, to implementing some joint weekly HSE walkdowns to make sure that issues were not only identified but also followed up, and the improvement, the let's say improvement could be monitored. Definition of KPIs, establishing also a disciplinary program to make sure that people could be dismissed from the site in case of not complying with these HSE protocols. And another lesson learned that was enforced in some of the projects was to make sure that adequate contract terms were in place to make sure that contractors and subcontractors were obliged to work as per very high and adequate HSE standards. Okay. The last one I've included here is on the early early local stakeholder management, which we consider is critical. Is somehow, I've already touched it briefly in the previous items. On one side, to obtain all the approvals by the local authorities, MEW and NCC, the municipality, the fire department. So a number of authorities had to approve at some point or another, either before starting construction or once the project had been commissioned. So a number of approvals were required, and the early engagement is really key to make sure that it's not impacting the project. Things like obtaining visas was also an issue during the execution, and this is something that needs to be accounted for, not only in the planning, but also, let's say, as I mentioned before, to make sure that the local partner is under control, under full control on this local aspect. And another important aspect was the import of equipment and material. So at some points there was a significant congestion in the ports and in the local port, and it was really very difficult for the contractors to make sure that the equipment and material was arriving to the site in time, and this is also something that the EPC and DBO contractors had to work, had to put a lot of effort to make sure that this was not impacting the project. Okay, and particularly the execution schedule. Okay. So basically, Dr. Salem and the audience, so this is what I have thought of sharing with you. So maybe I can complement it later in the questions and answers section.
Thank you very much, Robin. It was an excellent overview, and I'm sure there will be questions. I have to note here, Christoph will leave us at about 8 o'clock in about 20 or 10 minutes. So if you have any question directed to Christoph, please post it now so he can answer it in writing. We had disabled the chat by accident at the beginning, so now chatting section is available to everybody, as well as the question and answer section. Also, for those who missed the beginning of the webinar, after the webinar, probably in 2 days, we will post it in our YouTube channel, so that you can listen to it or share it with the colleagues and friends who do not know probably about this webinar. Thank you, Christoph. I see you answering one of the questions, so please do so before you leave us. And I would like to thank you in advance before leaving us and before we move to the next speaker to continue our webinar. Our next speaker will be representatives, a group of representatives from TSK, the EPC contractor of the PV and CSP plants. So I'd like to invite Alan to lead this session, and your colleagues, Jorge and Rafael. So Alan, you can share your screen right now.
Good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I think Rafael will share the common presentation from TSK.
Yes, I'm sharing it.
In this, we are going to just to show a brief snapshot of who is TSK at a glance and what is our activity, particularly in the solar renewable space and in Kuwait. So we've been working.
You see it now? Sorry, you see it?
Yes, yes. We've been working in the solar sector since 2006, where we developed and built our first project in Spain. Since then, we've been active in multiple countries across the global regions, particularly in the Middle East. We started in 2010. And as we mentioned before, Dr. Salem before, we are the EPC contractor of Shagaya PV and CSP, starting around 2013 or 14. We can see in the next slide what is the experience of TSK in the MENA region, where I want to show you two particular cases in the UAE and in Morocco. In those two cases, is exactly the same model that Kuwait government pretends to implement for the next phase of Shagaya. So, is PPP tenders where international developers partner with the local off-taker to build, own, and operate renewable power projects through an international tender process. In both cases, in the UAE, DIWA 260 megawatts PV plant and Morocco 160 megawatt CSP plant, TSK acted as a co-developer, as a technical partner of the consortium, as an EPC contractor, and some co-operator of the power plant as well. both cases were referencing those markets, similar to what is going to happen in Shagaya Phase II. Multiple investors from many regions participate. Of course, local Middle Eastern companies, but also European and Japanese consortiums. And TSK managed to be successful bidder together with our partners from Saudi Arabia, and we, as I said, we become the contractor and the technical partner into the scheme. So with the rest of, as you can see, all the activities that TSK is active in the Middle East region, mainly in the renewable space, but also in some other areas. And the next slide, we want to just emphasize, it's very similar to what what Worley Parsons explained before. We want to give explanation of our lessons learned as a EPC contractor in the power plants what we built, what is the two solar photovoltaic and the CSP, and we want to give you the lessons learned as EPC contractor, but also as operator, no? Because we are operating those plants, and at the end of the day, we, of course, we want to position ourselves as a future candidate for any consortium to complement with our capabilities, so give our technical capabilities and as our experience as co-developer in renewable projects globally. And of course, the local expertise is one of the factors we believe that any foreign investor want to solve, and this is where TSK can play a role in the next phases. So I leave my colleague Jorge, which is the operation manager in the CSP and PV projects, and he can maybe explain better, more details on the lessons learned since the technical point of view. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And thank you, Dr. Salem, for the invitation. Hello, everyone. As maybe the previous slide, please, Rafael. Because first of all, as Alan was saying, we were involved also in the construction and in the operation of the CSP and PV plants that currently we have in Kuwait. So mainly the lesson learned and all the challenges are similar, and previously Ruben Roman was saying some of them. I think that these challenges are very important for the success of this kind of projects, especially in Middle East and especially in Kuwait. There are some differences between a project in the North Africa or even inside Middle East. There are some differences between the countries. So knowing how to solve these issues is going to be very important, not only for the economic reasons, but for the project itself and how it's going to be in the future. Because, for instance, a company that can manage 900 workers per day, as TSK was managing during the construction, is something unique. Not all the companies know how to do it and how to handle, and even handle different companies from local companies, because you cannot bring all the companies from Spain or from Europe, what is the normal standard. So this is not something easy, and TSK did it correctly. Here we manage till 35 local companies. And also we are having some challenges as the visas, taxes, the weather conditions that also Ruben was mentioning. The local market is different from country to country, and also it's very different from Europe or from the States. So you have to focus also in that. And of course, the logistics. Some of them, I am going to talk about them later when we are going to talk about the operation and maintenance. But here is mentioned taxes. And this is something that could jeopardize the whole project if it's not managed correctly. So, and TSK did it well. And also the local market, the commercial relationship must be established with some key companies. And believe me, if you are not choosing these key companies, you are putting on risk the whole project. And it's needed a screening, a scanning, and also to establish a trust relationship with them in order to succeed. So maybe the rest of the challenges here we are going to mention in the next slide. So please, Rafael, could you please go to the next one? The first challenge can be seen in this picture. As you can see, the Shagaya project is very far away from the city, and there is only one road connecting the city with the project. The project is near the border with Iraq and with Saudi. That means that you don't have nothing close. You don't have a place a warehouse. You don't have a place to put your workers. You don't have food. You don't have water. So this is going to be one of the best, the worst things to manage. But talking about the plant itself, the CSP, what is the biggest plant that we have there, the project is a parabolic trough based on parabolic trough collectors. And the most important thing, I have here some technical details. I don't want to go through all the details, but the most important thing is something that Christoph was mentioning in his presentation, that we can save the energy to produce electricity during the night. So in this case, the technical data is 1,200 megawatt thermal energy hours. But the thing to remember is that we can produce electricity during 10 hours at night. So we can help to stabilize the power grid and to produce electricity not only during the day. This is something that can jeopardize and put on risk the whole grid, because if you don't have an energy that can accommodate to these peaks, you have nothing. So this is something that, from my point of view, is very important. Also, one of the biggest advantage of this plant is that it's focusing in reducing at maximum the water consumption. So for instance, for the cooling system, it's not water-based, it's air-based. And this is also something that is very good for the project, for the ambient, and also is helping, and by the way, it's working perfectly. We are not having any major issue during these 4 years of operation and maintenance. Next slide, please, Rafael. Talking now specifically about the challenge, the first one, the remote location. Talking about personal accommodation, I was talking about that before. There is only one road, very important. Far away from seaports, your staff during the construction and during the operation and maintenance is coming to seaports. How are they going to go to reach the plant? Just imagine, for instance, the changers. I remember, for instance, the problem that was for the transportation of some vessels that were coming. They were very length. The length was very high. So it's a special transport. And one of the most important things is that all the challenges are interconnected. That means that they can create a perfect storm. If, for instance, you have to transport something to the site, but the weather conditions are bad, maybe they are going to delay some days because this connection is affected by thunderstorms sometimes. So it's very important at this point to think about where are you going to locate your personnel. Focus on the planification closely to contractors in order to avoid excuses and so on, because this is well known that when there are sandstorms, we cannot do anything. Okay, we can plan, we can look closely the weather forecast, and we can anticipate the problem in order to put a solution. So, in talking about the weather conditions, believe me, it's a place that is very extreme. You can have 53 degrees in summer, but also you can have 2 degrees in winter. Also, when you have sunstorms, and sometimes it's not frequent, heavy rain. So again, street weather forecast supervision, continuous drills for health and safety training in order to automate in the personnel how to act if there is a sunstorm coming, not only for their own safety, but for the safety of the equipment. Cleaning of solar field must be a priority, of course. If you are focusing on the performance in the production, you have to clean the solar field constantly after a sunstorm, specifically. The AC system, talking about summer, after a sunstorm, usually the temperature is increasing very fast. So you have to keep an eye on the AC system, cleaning the system, and also to know if it's working or not. Also, you know, a power plant is something that is working with instruments, and you need to keep all these instruments working and supervising closely in order to avoid that this extreme weather condition is affecting their working conditions. And the ACC system is working with air. Yeah, but you have to clean it. You have to put an eye on that. You have to check if the dust is affecting the working of some blades and so on.
Okay, you have 2 minutes before we move to Rafael.
Yeah, we'll go fast. Sorry, Dr. Salem. Next slide, please. And the challenge 3 is the first of its kind in Kuwait. That means that lack of knowledge among local authorities. If you are going to bring a furnace, maybe they don't know what a furnace is, what is this for, because they are not used to this kind of things. They import authorization delays. This is very frequent. No expertise among local contractors. This is another problem. So you need more onshore personnel. You need the help of your client, of course, more overseas contractors, and more work supervision. And the challenge 4 is the human resources. Of course, if you are working with expat workforce, as mainly we are working here, you need to be an expert on what to hire, when to hire, what training to do, what are the differences between some nationalities, where are you going to keep this workforce, etc. That means high costs. And also the Kuwaitization. Now TSK is a Khalipa company here in Kuwait, and it's working perfectly, but we need the Kuwaitization. We have to train the personnel. We have to put them into work. We have to integrate with our staff, etc. So it's needed diversification in hiring personnel of different nationalities, interviews face-to-face, improve housing conditions, because they are living, some of the staff is living in the desert. So you have to focus on that. Reduce contractor at maximum. Almost all the staff is under TSK. And agreements with local authorities for national workforce. Next slide, please. I want to show you here what is our hierarchy in the plant. Now during the operation and maintenance phase, we are in total 63 people, but due to all the challenges that we were seeing before, we are having special things. You can see in the hierarchy normal things as operation manager, maintenance manager, operation and maintenance coordinator, health and safety manager, etc. Shift leaders, maintenance technicians, but also you can see several things that maybe is special due to the conditions that we were seeing before, as operation and maintenance drivers, water truck drivers, because we need to supply with water, cleaning truck drivers, because you have to keep the solar field working efficiently. Now you have someone in purchase with logistic experience. So this is based on the challenges that we were seeing before. We are accommodating our staff. And this is my part, to be fast. I don't want to use more time. If you have more questions, just tell me.
Thank you, Jorge. And we'll continue with Rafael about project development.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm trying to start the camera just to see me, but I think it's not working. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Salem, for inviting me to this webinar. As already introduced by you, I am the responsible of corporate finance for TSK, and I'm also the CEO of our subsidiary, Quasar Capital. Quasar Capital is a company 50% owned by TSK, 50% owned by a Spanish group that has been our partner for many years, called Eosol. Back in 2021, both companies decided to join forces and to make a huge bet on Quasar, creating Quasar, by incorporating both TSK and Eosol, all our pipeline under current development, and more importantly, all our staff specialized on the business of project development and thus their know-how on project development that, as Alan explained before, it's more than 15 years. And TSK, as probably you know, is a highly technological group. We are focused on delivering projects under EPC contract to customers all around the world, focused on energy, water, and the industrial sector mainly. And these capabilities have been determinant when deciding to create Quasar, because our main goal was and is creating a fully vertically integrated IPP that can cover every single activity within the chain value in as most countries as possible. Focusing on our experience as an IPP, in this slide we try to summarize in which countries we've been and what kind of technologies we have developed. Our first steps, as I said, within development were done back in 2007 in Spain, and were PV related. Before 2010, we had developed 30 megawatts. That maybe today seems not so much, but back then it was a lot. The sector was starting, and for example, one of the projects was a 70 megawatt project in the south of Spain, that the investment was around 150 million euros. So obviously the prices were not the same, no? And that area, we also started to develop other technologies, especially CSP plants. We developed also in the south of Spain a 50 megawatt CSP plant, same size as the one in Shagaya. We started to develop it in 2010, and the project entered into operation 2014. And that project obviously represented a huge challenge, because we had 40% equity and the investment was very high back then. But actually, having developed these PV and these CSP plants during that years, and we maintaining them in our stake, we were the owners of them for more than 10 years, and we operated them, allow us to gain a lot of know-how, especially on the CSP side, on the technology, that actually eventually led us to such important CSP projects like the one in Shagaya, the one in Morocco, Ouarzazate, that Alan explained before, or another one in South Africa. We are these days fully committed on CSP development, and we are actually involved these days on development here in Spain of a CSP project. And we are investing a lot in research and development to being able to develop our own technology that allow us to maintain as world leaders on CSP projects. Back that time, I will go faster. We will also develop it in France, more than 100 megawatts, and in Mexico, that has been our key market. We have developed there over 340 megawatts, 20 megawatts, sorry. And we these days maintain in property 146 megawatts of PV plants there. Mexico for us is a key market, but it's a clear example of what we will discuss a bit later, and what we should try to avoid here in Kuwait in terms of regulatory instability since actual government has tried to change the electrical law and therefore jeopardizing investments of many developers that had already been incurred during all these years. 2014, we also jumped to the Caribbean, to Puerto Rico. We built a 27, developed a PV plant. We are these days focused there also on a tender performed by the electrical company. And well, all this experience that I just explained are based on our own experience in developing. Then on the right side, the right up side of the slide, you can see another projects that we co-develop, finance, build, and operated also. Most important one have been already explained by Alan, the one in UAE and Morocco. So I think I can move to the next one. This slide we have tried to summarize, although you, Dr. Salim, did before, the main milestones in the deployment of renewable energies in Kuwait during these years. As you said, in 2010, KISER was assigned to explore the feasibility of adopting renewable energies in the power generation. We guess that your investigations were the base of the Emir announcement in December 2012 in the United Nations Conference for Climate Change in Qatar, that Kuwait should be meeting 50% of the demand from renewable energy sources by 2030. Meaning that this should be around 4 or 5 gigawatts of installed capacity. Currently, the contribution of renewable energies to the country is actually limited basically to Shagaya Phase I, to the 70 megawatts already explained. Therefore, we think immediate actions must be taken in order to meet the 15%. And we think it's very important, and have been explained for also by Christoph and Jorge, that for Kuwait to succeed in the energy transition, it's need to deploy the required infrastructure components that would allow the electric grid stability not to be affected. We think CSP plants are a very good solution, as they also said, to address this issue, since current technology, as Jorge explained, we are able to produce energy during 10 hours during the night, allowing grid stability. And involving the private sector in power generation to involve us a clear legislative and contractual framework for the protection of the investors must be developed. And we also need that the credit worthiness of the state institutions are ensured through government warranties. This is also key. Therefore, back in 2014, the door to private sector was open, and launching the IPP, was open for IPP, sorry, launching the PPP law number 116. Based on our experience, there are many essentials that must be assured within this PPP program to foster investments, and can be categorized in four main categories. The first one is related to foreign direct investment. We think there must be a really strong foreign direct investment law that gives certainty and allows doing business efficiently in the country for foreigners. We know Kuwait updated the law back in 2013 to facilitate foreign investments, including some improvements. But what we expect additional regulations, and it will be welcome, and we are looking forward to seeing more favorable measures in this PPP program. Second category is related to taxation treaties. For us are key when deciding to invest. In this particular case, Spain and Kuwait have a double tax treaty, and this is of a huge importance for us. But also relating to taxation, we think it's really valuable for a PPP process to include within the law investment incentives like tax benefits both on the corporate side and also on the customs duty when being the EPC contractor, and also having the permission to recruit certain foreign employees. We know this, or we guess this will be regulated, since we've seen in the PPP law launched in 2014, the Article 28, a section of these incentives. So we are expecting these incentives to be given a huge importance. These two previous issues that we discussed are highly dependent, of course, on the political will of the country to achieve and deploy renewable energies. And it's critical also to understand within the legal regime the transparency of the legal regime, and other issues we need to be fully understood, like, for example, expropriation and compensation treatments that we've seen also in an article in the PPP law, in order to give investors the security enough. One point that we think it's very important, at least for us within the legal regime, is also having access to international arbitration and independent regulation, rather than Kuwaiti courts being the competent authority. And the last category is related to projects bankability. Of course, here, the main issue, as you also mentioned, Dr. Salem, at the beginning, is the PPA, the Power Purchase Agreement. PPA is key because given the huge amount of investment that needs to be committed to develop these kind of projects, then it is extremely important, and the lenders will for sure require it. And related to the PPAs, there are 4 categories. First one, there must be a really strong credit-rated counterparty, since the whole project, obviously, and the capability of their repayment relies on only one client. In this case, Kuwait is actually a very strong country in terms of international rating, which is very good. And we expect to see also, as mentioned before in the PPP, a sovereign guarantee covering the risk of the PPA. Secondly, we expect to see a long-term PPA covering the life of the project with solid and predictable income, covering, of course, the full generation of the plant at a fixed price, but also with coverage of the inflation, of the CPI, that it's so important these days in the world. Additionally, we think it's very important to give protection to the lenders, and they will demand it in terms of securities. We also saw in the Article 23 of the PPP law that the regulation will allow, or should allow, securities in terms of pledging the shares of the project in favor of the lenders. And this is very important also. And lastly, in development, of course, is key, having the land secure. So we are also expecting having a long-term land lease agreement in the PPP law, given that the land is state-owned. We think this is also a very good issue. This is all. As previously mentioned by Alan and Jorge, we are honestly excited to participate in Shagaya Phase II and being able to make the best use of our experience in the country, both as technological partner for the EPC side and also as the developer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Just before we proceed with Elcnor, I'd like just to thank Jorge and Christoph, who already start answering some of the questions, so that we can save time at the end of the webinar. So for our speakers, please go over the questions, and if you feel that you can answer it, please do in typing, so that we can save time at the end of the webinar. And thank you for our audience for this very interesting questions we can see. Last but not least, I will move to our wind EPC contractor, represented by Robin, I think, yes. So Robin, please turn on your camera.
Yep, here I am.
Raul. Yeah. Raul, yeah.
You mean Raul, right?
Yeah, Raul. I can see Raul. Yes.
Yes, hello everyone.
You can share your presentation because it appears then disappeared.
Yes. Okay.
So we have about 15 minutes. So we expect the webinar will be extended for 10 or 15 minutes extra than.
I will try to make it quick. Thank you, Dr. Salem, for the invitation, and thank you everyone to share this moment with us in this matter. I will start our presentation with a brief description what Elecnor is in the world, for those who don't know the company. And after that, I will talk about the Shagaya wind farm, first of the design and construction phase, and after that with the operation and maintenance. That is what we are doing right now. So here we can see that the company was founded at the late 50s. On the beginning, we were specialized working on electricity, mostly in the overhead lines for distribution and transportation, working for the big electrical companies in Spain. And after that, during these 60 years, the company has been looking for other business. And as you can see in this slide, the diversification of activities in our company, that I like to say that it would be easier to list in which engineering areas Elecnor is not involved than those ones that Elecnor is involved, that as you can see here, many of them. Also, we are around the world in 55 countries, and in any of these countries, we can stay doing any of these business that we explained before. And to focus on the Shagaya wind farm, starting for the design and a brief introduction of what the area is. As my colleagues explained before, this is 100 kilometers west from Kuwait city. What it means is so far from local supplies, and this presents some difficulties, but there are some points that facilitate the design of a wind farm. This is the flatness area that it is, with any obstacle. What for the design, you only need to take into account the distance between turbines, as you don't need to care of other obstacles that can make any turbulence on the turbines. We signed the contract in 2015 and finished the construction phase on the summer of 2017. And in this moment, we start the operation and maintenance services. The scope is the turbines that include the 5 turbines that include a high temperature and dust protection kits. That this allows the turbine to perform until 45 degrees with a slightly derating between 40 and 45 degrees. In other countries, usually at 40 degrees, the turbine is stopped due to this high temperature. And the dust protection kit that is mostly involved to avoid any access of dust inside the nacelle, that is full of equipment like the generator, converter, gearbox, and some hydraulics, and all the transformer that can be affected for this dust and also for the high temperature. In the design, we took care of this condition, mostly for the turbines. Civil and electrical are not quite difficult, but for the turbines, we should take care of this high temperature and the dusty environment. And also a a condition that we only found in Shagaya, that is the really lower density that is affecting a lot in the performance of the turbine. As we can see here in the power curve, usual standards for calculation is 1.22 kilograms per cubic meter. In Shagaya, we have around 1.09 kilograms per cubic meter, and in other places, we are around 114, 115. So it means the strength of the wind to push the blades is less here in Shagaya than in other places that where we have this kind of wind turbines. This point is most critical in the low wind area. As you can see here, this is the low wind area of this is the power curve. And this is the ramp where we are increasing the wind speed and we are increasing the active power of the turbine, where we need to maximize the pitch control, who make the angle of the blades to make a lot of profit as possible from the wind. And once we arrive to the around 12 meters per second, we have more wind speed than we need to perform the 2 megawatts that the turbines are capable of generate. So as we say, the pitch control it's a key concept mostly in this area with low wind speed. These are some pictures during the construction phase. As we can see here, also the main challenge during the construction phase for us, it were the high temperature, as in the rest of the installations in Shagaya. That in our case, the scope more affecting was the puring of the concrete in the foundations, as due to the big amount of concrete that is around 420 cubic meters per foundation. It has the round puring temperature because of the chemical reaction, right, of the concrete. And also if you increase this temperature or you keep rising this temperature due to high ambient temperature, it can be a problem for the stability of the concrete. So we were forced to do it by night. It's not strange also in Spain, in some periods during the year, July, August, we need to do so too. Also in other wind farms in Jordan. But also here it was necessary to perform the installation of the turbines during nighttime to avoid them, as we can see in this picture, to avoid some strokes on the staff involved in this installation, as these are very critical works, right? You need to be very accurate and very precise when you install the tower and the nacelle, that you have to be millimeters of accurate to install this equipment. As my previous colleague said, the long distance from the supplies to the project area, it was a problem, because it's difficult. Any kind of supply, easier it can be to find in other places. Here you need to planify very well to have it right on time when you need it. And also some interested we found during the construction. Maybe in Kuwait it's common in some areas, but for us it was like a surprise that we found 2 explosive artifacts that we need to coordinate with the local authorities to remove it from the site and continue with our works. But this kind of coordination, in our case, as we have our local partner, Al-Ghanim, that we need to be grateful with them, because they help us a lot to know the locals and the local staff, local standards and supplies. That for us it was easier maybe than for others to perform our work in Kuwait. And talking about the operation and maintenance phase, The scope of works is the same than in the design and construction. The turbines, the meteorological mast with all the sensors it has, and wind turbines SCADA, that everything is monitorized. And to perform the preventive, the corrective, and some improvements that usually the turbines manufacturer, they perform on the turbines, that with historical data they have from this wind farm and from others, they improve some capabilities of the turbines. And talking about the manufacturer, they are usually a key factor on any wind farm. As you know, inside the nacelle you have a generator, a gearbox, some hydraulics, pistons on the blades, rotating parts, mechanical, and a medium voltage transformer, a converter, that is all the power electronics. And I like to think in the turbine like a small factory. When you have a large kind of different equipment, and you need to take care of all of them. So for sure you will need a full support of the manufacturer and the engineering department of this manufacturer. And talking about the environmental conditions in Shagaya, as we can see here, regarding the average wind speed, it's a good area. But what is more important, and this is quite good in this area, is that the prevailing wind direction is really consistent during the years. And you can see it's very pointing on this point. So it's helping the design of the wind farm, together with the flatness of the area. It's very easy to design a wind farm here in Shagaya, because you only need to take care of the separation between the turbines. You don't need to take care of other problems such as hills or mountains or valleys that can make some turbulence on the turbines. Also, this the ambient temperature, as all our colleagues said, this is maybe most of the challenging of the Shagaya area that affect a lot the performing of the turbine and the electronics inside. And also sometimes we have this rain that for us this is not common there, but it happens sometimes. This picture is from December 2020. And the sandstorms that in our case force the local staff, the site staff, to evacuate the area any sandstorm we suffer or we face. These are the key, as in any other generation facility, these are the key factors to account the performing of the wind farm, right? This is the annual production. As Dr. Salem said before, we are higher on what was previous on the past, and the capacity factor, especially in the capacity factor, as a reference value, any location with a capacity factor around 34 or higher, it could be a suitable place to install a wind farm. Here in Shagaya, the average during these last 4 years is around 40%, what it means is like stay running on the top of the capacity 40% of the time, which is a quite high values. And make Shagaya as a very interesting place to increase the investment in wind farm. Let me say more than 100 even or 200 megawatts, as this can help a lot in create some synergies that will help them to reduce the cost of the maintenance of the turbines, as you can make more profit of the staff on site, and also to get full support from the manufacturers, because usually they prefer to make an installation at least 50 megawatts, but surrounded by other facilities, right? And finally, to talk about the main challenge during the operation and maintenance, one is this one, due to the small size of the wind farm, we can have the same problems that other wind facilities, increase by the high temperature, dusty environment, and the long distance from any other wind farm facility. And in this case, it will help a lot, an increase in the size of the wind farm, because we will get more support from the manufacturer. And also, as an example, we have 3 technicians on site, but with 8 technicians, you can handle a 100 megawatts wind farm perfectly and perfectly attended. Some of this is because they have a remote control, that everything in the turbine is monitored. It is full of sensors, so you have control over any value constantly and remotely. Another challenge, it was, as explained before, our turbine only in Shagaya project has a combination of high temperature and dust protection kits. Those are quite opposite in purpose and principles, as high temperature is constantly opening new ways of entrance for the air and ventilation in the nacelle, and the dust protection is the opposite, that you need to close as much as possible the nacelle to avoid the entrance of dust. So we have been forced to modify the clean and maintenance protocols, especially during summer season, to clean more often the filters, change it, or take care of these huts and these ventilation ways. Also, the extreme conditions in Shagaya has led to a premature wear in some components. We need to remind these mechanical components that are always rotating, like the rotor and the high-speed axis and the gearbox. And with this high temperature and the influence of the dust, we have experienced some extra consume in spare parts that, together with the small size of the wind farm, make us more difficult to get the values we want to reach in availability and productivity. And to finalize, and also talking about the power curve measurement, that is the best way to measure the productivity of the turbine, right, or the performance, and not only the performance, but also the adaptation of the turbine to this environment. We are right now performing a test that is previous and is never common to do it on site, because according with our Siemens Gamesa experts and colleagues, due to this very low density of air that we have in Shagaya, as we said before, is around 1.08 kilograms per cubic meter, it is not recommendable to extrapolate the power curve verified on the factory with regular calculations. We need to perform some tests before with the blades stopped to measure the actual impact of the ambient conditions in the measurement equipment of the turbine. And after that, to study this data and check if maybe we need to change the pitch strategy mostly in the low wind area of the power curve. So we are performing right now this test that we expect will provide a very good information for Kisher and from all the Shagaya stakeholders to invest in the future also in wind turbines. And that's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Raul. Also, wind is very important part of the energy mix we're always looking for. We came to the end of our webinar. And thank to our speakers who speak and answer questions in writing, which is very time optimization. If you can just turn on the cameras for the speakers. We had about 13 questions been answered, and 3 are not yet. I just answered 1, so we left with 2. I guess Robin is answering 1, and 1 I will answer it live. A question from Ryan. By the way, Ryan, thank you very much for your interesting questions. Most of the questions you put in the Q&A section are very important and very common in such projects. With regard to regulatory body to govern renewable energy and energy efficiency matters in Kuwait, unfortunately, we don't have government body doing this task yet, although all the speakers, including me, we are representing the private sector. We don't have an official representation today, but we do hope in the future we can host some speakers from the PPP Authority, Ministry of Electricity and Water, and also Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research, so that we can have the official prospect regarding to these mega projects. So we will not be able to answer this, but we share with you the concern that right now, I think the right body is Ministry of Electricity and Water, since they added the renewable energy part to the official name of the ministry. Probably they will create a department or division to tackle these matters. With this, I would like to thank you all. If you have any closing remark, I will give 1 minute to each of our speakers to close with. We start with Robin.
Yeah, maybe
if you have
Dr.
closing
Salem,
remarks.
Yeah, what I was thinking of, because there was another question from Ryan that I would like to respond on. So the question on when the information will be publicly made available. I mean, KISER is the owner of the facility and the project developer. KISER has all this information and is the right, let's say, entity.
They can contact KISER.
I'm sure that I think that KISER has already been publishing part of this information and results over the last years, and this should come, let's say, from KISER and through KISER. Okay. And
by the way, just to add to you, these 3 projects are the only projects in the world that they are owned by the government, and there is no restriction on data regarding to the weather data, resource data, performance data. And the main reason for that is to just unlock any doubts or questions for developers, for investors, and for the government officials to be comfortable and confident with any step forward we take. And this is the reason why probably KISER, Ministry of Electricity and Water, and the public authority will be keen to release and make these data publicly available, so that the future expansion will be built based on real life experience. Thank you, Robin. If you need to add any more.
Nothing else other than saying thank you for letting us participate, and everyone for your attention.
Thank you. Jorge and Rafael, I knew Alan already left. If you have any closing remarks.
No, thank you for the invitation. I mean, we are here in Kuwait, so we are in Al Hamra Tower. So if someone wants to join us and to have some words, we are more than open.
Thank you very much.
No, from my side, nothing else. Just wanted to apologize because my camera, I don't know what's happening with the configuration, and it doesn't allow. I don't know, Dr. Salem, can maybe put my camera or doing something, but not working. Just wanted to apologize.
Thank you. Thank you. Raul?
No, nothing else to add. Thank you, Dr. Salem, and thank you the rest for joining us. It was very interesting talking.
Thank you very much. As we said at the beginning, for those who missed whole or part of the webinar, we will send you a link within the next few days once we post this webinar in our YouTube channel. Thank you all, and thank you for your patience with us. We extend our time by about 20 minutes. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for the speakers, and we look forward to see you again in the future webinars. As our colleague from the GCC Council recommended that we should talk about the renewable energy deployment and the GCC as a whole, not in Kuwait, which is another hot topic. We'll think about it in the near future. Thank you all and have a good night.